Good morning, everybody, and for the last time, welcome back to the Marcus Smith podcast. When I started this podcast this time a year ago, last Remembrance Sunday, I was more or less nothing more than a sort of fringe voice, and my ideas weren't particularly welcome or reciprocated in polite society. And now we've come to such a bad point, unfortunately, that all the normies, all the people who are not particularly right wing at all the people who are not particularly conservative or traditional or religious, are echoing exactly everything that I've been saying for the past year. And so now we've come to the sort of point where the podcast has essentially fulfilled its purpose. We've come to a sort of very round point now. Indeed, episode 77, a very important, significant Christian number indeed. It is the amount of times that Jesus inclines us to forgive one another. And so ultimately, what compelled me to stop was not, as some people thought originally when I announced the decision, was not any external pressure or peer pressure, although goodness me, there's been no shortage of that over the past year. There's been many times in my life where I've thought, this is the moment where they come for me. This is the end. This is the moment where you're going to be put up publicly for a show trial, and everything is going to be publicly condemned, and you're going to face the harshest of punishments for it. There has been no shortage of moments. Even now, there's several of them that come immediately to mind. And so miraculously, we've sort of managed to make it this far. And so, yeah, there's been no shortage of people also that I've known personally that have demanded for me to either totally change what I'm talking about or just to totally stop. That there's been no shortage of threats as well. All par for the course, really. And so ultimately, we've come to this point where I feel like my time and energy could be better served. Ultimately, being constantly in the loop, there's only so much purpose and benefit that it brings. When I was, recording 2 episodes weekly, sometimes even 3, I was constantly scrolling through the news, through social media, through X, through YouTube, through all the sort of political podcasts, and there's only a certain amount of information, graphic information, that a human can possess until it starts to have a negative effect on him. And ultimately, it was of no extra benefit to me. It did not change my mind. I was already about as convinced as you can be that there are evil demonic forces at play trying to destroy us, trying to destroy our society. And so ultimately, all it was doing is unknowingly making me quite miserable inside. And so over the past couple of weeks, where I've really sort of relinquished all of this, like I haven't really got a clue what's going on in society. Obviously, all the big headlines still sort of leak their way towards me, with the Wayne Broadhurst stuff, all the terrorist attacks. I mean, goodness me, there's so much ammunition now, and so much. It's simply just so prevalent. All this terrible stuff, this total annihilation of society, that ultimately it makes my voice sort of unnecessary in this sphere, because I think by now people are very aware that we live in a very broken and flawed society that is heading down a very dark, dangerous path. And so ultimately, that's what compelled me to stop. I shelved, retired the podcast on my own terms. And so I do believe that my time can be better served in other avenues, as I'm sure you will all see in the near future. But for now, what does the future hold for us in store? I'm talking us living in Britain, in Europe, in America, in the Christian West, generally speaking. It does not look very good whatsoever at this point. I simply rest my case, and I think really there's nothing else I can say. I think all the people that are truly open minded, that are truly willing to keep their eyes open and to really understand what's going on in the world and to live in reality, I think by now have been convinced that what I'm saying is not exaggeration, it is not extremism, it is simply me noticing reality, a very bleak and dangerous reality. And all the people who are not open to that, who are not open to living in reality and prefer to comfortably live in their own delusions, have continued time and time again to ignore all of the bells ringing for doom. And with the news in America over the last week, it really does epitomise this threat that we are facing in the person of Zoran Mamdani. You know, this smiling millennial man who presents himself very, very eloquently and very elegantly, but is ultimately one of the figureheads of the Islamist plus communist threat that really is trying to swallow the West whole. That is what the future holds, and in Britain as well. Unfortunately, as many people keep saying, it doesn't appear as if we've hit rock bottom yet, basically. And the good news is definitely that Tommy Robinson has been acquitted of all terrorism charges. I mean, how ridiculous, but that's a good thing. However Tommy Robinson fares, that's probably how the nation of Britain will fare. And so I think at this point, like I've made all these points a million times, there's really no need for me to repeat them, you know. I think people can see it with their own eyes and hear it with their own ears. But what should we guard ourselves against that we're not paying so much attention to? I really do think the threat of AI is really not being paid attention to. We're fighting on so many fronts that AI is sort of a bottom of the pile topic, even though it is a very, very big threat to our lives, and it's very much as much of a threat, you could say, as the Industrial Revolution was, a few centuries ago. And there's no reason to believe that the AI revolution is just going to come and wipe out the Industrial Revolution, and we're going to all live in the countryside, all in harmony, and so on. ChatGPT has announced that it will essentially start producing AI, erotica, pornography, whatever it may be. So we simply need to kick this AI addiction that we've all been facing. And yeah, it makes it more convenient. Yeah, it's useful. Yeah, it's not all evil, but ultimately, those are the cogs that are being turned in the machine, and you can, by continuing to turn these cogs, are only making the machine stronger and stronger, and ultimately, to what ends? The ends do not appear to be good whatsoever. And also the fact that as society will slowly start to liberalize more and more, we also have to guard ourselves against this. We haven't always lived in very extreme left wing woke times. The 90s were a time of false prosperity, as we see, for example, in the Old Testament, with some of the kingdoms of Israel. We notice that the period preceding the total destruction and collapse of a society is this false prosperity, which did not cultivate the sort of good fruits that a civilization should have to offer. If a society only cultivates the worst of fruits, then that prosperity will only last for so long, and it will run out eventually. And we are simply unprepared to fight off this problem. By now, the forces that are attacking us are so demonic and evil that politicians, first of all, are probably not willing to tackle the problem, and secondly, are probably unable to tackle the problem. And we definitely see that in Britain. There unfortunately isn't a united political front to attack all of these problems. The most important one probably is the fact that we are totally disunited. So long as we are not all singing off the same hymn sheet, or we are not all unanimously in agreement that if we do not avert this, then a big black civilizational hole awaits all of us. And not just the people fighting for freedom. We really do need to forget all these tiny, petty squabbles over irrelevant issues like Israel, of all things. My goodness me, the last thing I'm thinking about right now is Israel. But the most important one probably is men and women. So long as men are unwilling to take the lead, and that means to take the risks and to put themselves in the firing line, and so long as women are more focused on demanding the right to kill their own babies, we are never ever going to get anywhere so long as we are disunited. And the one thing that unites our enemies is the fact that they are fully in agreement. They are fully united when it comes to the main goal. as we can see with what's happened in America over the past week. And so, if we're actually serious about solving these problems, then ultimately what we do want is this Christian renaissance. Is if we want to make Britain a Christian society again, then we need to make it a Christian society again. Unfortunately, there is no other way. You cannot just say it into existence. You cannot just will it into existence. That means that you probably have to start going to church on a Sunday. That probably means that you have to start praying every morning at least and every night. That probably means that you should give up your paganistic, godless, comfortable life for something more spiritually and societally meaningful and purposeful. There simply is no other way. Because as we've seen in history, thousands, if not millions, of nations, of godless nations, who did not walk with the Lord and who did not wish to follow his divine plan for us, have simply been, they've come and gone, they've been powerful, but there comes a day where they get swallowed up, conquered, raped, invaded, and exterminated by another stronger nation. And that's exactly what's happening to the nation of Britain today, and to Europe and to America, to the Christian West. There simply is no other way. If you want to keep deluding yourself that, we'll come up with some sort of rationalistic, liberal solutions to all of these deep spiritual cancers that really are taking over our society and killing it from the inside, then, feel free. But I think as things keep getting worse and worse and worse, I think the more people are going to realize that there is only one solution to this problem. And we all know what the solution is. It all just depends, not really if, but when we are willing to accept that. And as Jesus Christ himself said in the Gospels, he is the way, the truth, and the life. And that's all I need to say. I rest my case. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Christ is King. God bless everybody. And thank you for watching and listening to the Michael Smith podcast for the last time, for now.